laptop, I can set it to driving. Awesome. Never noticed that. All right. Well, obviously, we'll give people a couple more minutes to arrive.
Yeah, I'm just going to message Lorenzo.
People are pretty fiery about this. I'm surprised we're the only ones here. Maybe that's the way it is. I don't know.
Everybody's flamed out, but I guess most of the discussion has been happening not on List. It's been happening in some developer forums.
There was like some on a Slack, but like I think people basically were like at some point said like, okay, let's move it somewhere where it's publicly visible and recorded or something like this.
Yeah.
I think in the last couple of weeks there weren't any discussions on that topic anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were some flameouts, that's for sure.
We're so close. We're right there.
This one's been around. I don't know. Maybe all of them are around for a long time, but it seemed like this one was around for a long time. Because I know we had our implementation for quite some time. Years now.
You mean like in general, like signaling for WebRTC or?
For Wish, for this, for WebWeb. Because I did WebRTC in 2011 or 2012. I don't remember when it was. It's been too long now. Over a decade.
I think it started around 2011 or something like this, yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Chrome. Hi. Good morning. Yeah, Chrome was changing something like every week. It was breaking the implementation I was working on to try to get it going.
All right. Well, I sent another reminder to the mailing list. So there we go. People are starting to straggle in here. Interesting. All right. I think we're going to give everybody 2 more minutes and then we'll just get started.
Yeah, it'd be a shame to start without Sergio unless we know he's not coming.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
He's in the participant list.
He just joined.
Just joined.
Great. Okay. Cool. We'll still give everybody. We'll start at 5 after. Time zones are hard. I have a meeting that every time it meets in a different time zone. And like, there's always like 10 people that are in the wrong time zone. Welcome to the world of international SDOs.
Which goes to like, should we all agree on like just using one single time all around the world? And then your local time is just off.
There might be somebody in my country that would propose that because, you know, it would be easier, but it would be centered on our time, obviously, because, you know, first.
I'm afraid
the real time is here, right?
I was going to say, I'm afraid the British invented time, so it's a lost cause.
But I mean, Yeah, we're a couple of. You guys are going to be the 52nd state, so just after Canada comes
Yeah,
in,
yeah. Or
they're going to come
53rd.
over. It's all going to be good.
Yeah, so we're told.
Depending-
But it
depending on
might be a
how
reverse
Greenland votes.
takeover.
Might be.
You've always wanted
Sean,
a
I have
royal
the-
family, so there you go. You might get one this way.
Sorry, Niels.
I have the meeting notes open, so I'm
Okay, great.
just
So
so
we're not
used to
gonna-
like doing it. So
All right.
to make.
All
that
right.
a
Well,
little-
let's get started. It's 5 after. I think we got most of the people here. Hey, welcome to the virtual interim. This is the first, I think, virtual interim that this session, this meeting has ever had. Working group has ever had. I'm Sean. Niels is
I'm
there
Niels.
too. Sergio is one of our primary people, has been doing a whole lot of work for us. And this is just kind of the administrative stuff, right? It is an official meeting of the IETF, so this is the note well. The gist of this one is basically if you know something about IPR, say something. There's a list of other policies. The next one is the note really well, which is the basically treat everybody with respect. And you don't have to love the person's ideas, but you should really love the person. So let's try to keep it professional. And our agenda, it's pretty straightforward. The purpose is basically just to try to figure out what we're going to do with this particular PR. And then if we have time to go over any other outstanding issues to try to get WEP done. Does anybody have any questions about the rules of engagement here or what the plan of attack is? Because I think the plan of attack is Niels made some slides, so I'm going to hand them over to him. And then
I apologize.
do you want to,
I didn't. Yep.
Yeah. Do you want to drive the slides? I'll stop presenting and then it's all you.
Where do I start sharing?
If you go down on the bottom, there should be a share slides share slides. And then I think you can pick one of the.
I only say upload mensch slides. No.
So there should be like a mute audio, stop video. There we go.
Well, this is now going to be from my.
Oh, you're going to do it locally. Okay, exciting. We get to see this
I don't. That's only because
it's in your mail.
I love that Lorenzo is keeping absolutely silent at this point. Like,
no, I actually don't, because I do know that in regular meetings we get slides from the data tracker and pre-upload them directly.
That's what I did. It works.
Yeah, but I honestly don't know how it works for interims. So if there is a similar process there,
you can. So that's actually what I did for my slides. I sent them in early, and then I was able to use the share presentation, and it worked.
I think that was just like user error on me not finding the right button. Anyway.
Yeah, I think one more button over to the right. So all right, I'll stop talking.
I blanked on asking people actually to provide slides, so I basically created like super simple slides, only with the idea of us having like an easier way to reference which of the different alternatives everyone is talking to. So I tried to make them basically without any opinions or whatever. Like, so I will leave it to you guys to give the arguments in favor or against the different offers. So option one, client-side offer only. I think that's basically what we have in the current draft. Then I think a slight variation of that would be we stick with client-side offers, but we somehow build something in which allows later that a server could say like, hey, I only support server-side offers or something like this. Third option, I just put it in here, server-side offer only. I think that's what we had like really early on in the draft. I don't think anyone is actually arguing for that. I just put it on here for the sake of like listing all the options. And then basically client and server can do the offer. They somehow need to figure out who to do it. Although this is I put it as a separate one. This is where both implementations would be mandatory to support both. So like both versions would work. And I guess then the fifth one is like a variation of then where they both support it, but one side is optional and they need to somehow figure out who is actually going to do the offer. And I put in here like more, I don't know. I was thinking I forgot, probably forgot some more last night when I threw this together. So my idea was only to keep this up here so that people, when we talk about it, can kind of like say I'm talking about option number 1 or 4 or whatever, to make it a little bit easier as a reference. I think that's it. I think with that, we open the microphone line. And Tim is up first.
Yeah, so I want to apologize for the fact that I did this super late, but I ended up having a day yesterday when I couldn't actually see anything, so I spent a lot of time thinking. And I ended up having this idea, which I'm kind of like. So I dropped it in the mailing list earlier today, but basically the idea is that we do one, but we address the desire for the server to say, hey, look, this is actually the codec that I care about. You know, I think a lot of there seemed to me that there are 2 drivers for saying that we want option 3 or you know, server-side offers, and they fell into two categories. One of which is like basically like, hey, we've got, I want to call them legacy SFUs that work that way, and we need to like support them. And I'm really not sympathetic to that. We did an awful lot of that in the early days of WebRTC, and none of those legacy things ended up being useful. They all became huge bug sources and confusion sources and didn't actually help. So I'm like really against addressing that as a legacy concern. But I'd totally take the other argument, which is that there are situations where the server has very strong opinions about what codec it's going to use, and it would like to like tell the client that, and the answer is too late. So my suggestion is that when you create a web URL, one of the things you can do on that is add on the web URL some indication of what codec you expect the client to use, and then the client would apply that in set codec preferences before it generated the offer. And so you would get the codec that you were asking for, or no codec at all, or whatever, without, and you don't get any of this kind of excessive round trip problem either. So it seemed to me like that might be acceptable. It might be an acceptable way out of the problem. And I've seen that other people do it. Now, admittedly, they do it obscured with base64 encoded hashtags, but in essence, they're doing exactly this. So it's not like it's not been done by other people. That's my little burst. There you go.
Julius? Julius, can you hear us?
Is it better now?
Yes.
I'd like to come back to the list that's on the screen right now. And I'd like to remind you that there is no IETF police force. Okay, if we put something in an RFC, implementers end up implementing parts of it or all of it, hopefully. And we can put all the musts we have. We have no way to send a SWAT team to the home of an implementer who didn't do a must. And that is why I would really like people to not consider point 4. Having both client and server offers being mandatory is going to degenerate into 5. Some people will implement server offers in good faith. They will say, okay, I'll do the client side later when I have time. And later never happens. Okay, either the customer says, well, it's working, why should I pay you a consulting fee? Or else you are working on your own, and the later never happens. So we must, I have no strong opinion about whether we want client or server side to be mandatory, but we must pick just one that is mandatory for both clients and servers. Otherwise, we're going to degenerate into 2 dialects of web that don't interoperate.
Can I get is that really the full list of the reasons that people want server side offers? Is that we want to constrain codecs ahead of time and the legacy, like, or is that reducing, or is that like simplifying all the desires here? I want to make sure I understand everything people want out of this before a fully formed opinion.
I think that there has been 3 drivers for the server-side offers. First one was the WIP and web interoperability. I mean, being able to send or to be able to send a WIP generated offer to a web or vice versa. Well, anyway, yeah. So generated the offer in WIP and pass it in web or vice versa. So that was the first one. The second one, I think that was one issue with tweets not accepting the H.264 profile, and because it was not properly parsing the H.264 profile, and it specific a specific string in the profile ID. So it was not known. So it was obviously a problem in the implementation of tweets, because it should allow different levels of not have a hard-coded profile ID there. And the third one, I think that it is the desire to support SVUs, but not legacy SVU, but that try to use web for the case when you have multiple streams. So it is not about only legacy SVUs, but people wanted to use this in SVUs and wanted to have more than one stream name, more than one audio or video track, that it is not possible to do it if you do the client side, because you don't know the number of tracks, audio and video tracks that would be available on the server. So I think that these are the main 3 drivers. I don't know if there is any reason a part of this. I mean, I have opinions about all the 3 topics, but I just want to list first if anyone has any other view about why are the main drivers for the client, the server-side offers.
Yeah, I mean, I can expand a bit on all of them. I mean, the first one, basically what I at the time called the federation one, so the ability to chain WIP and web or web and WIP one after the other. I mean, that was just like a nice to have side effect, I called it. So not really something that we really strongly need, just something that at the time when I started implementing both WIP and web, I thought might be a good idea to try and have servers implementing the specifications interact with each other. Let's say JITS implements WIP and web, Janus implements WIP and web. We have an easy way to get the video out of JITS and put it in Janus and vice versa. But I mean, that was just a nice side effect of the specification, not really something that I strongly see as a motivation to add this back, especially considering that, as I mentioned, I'm in favor of having both client and server-side offers. So, I mean, if you have somebody that only does offer and offer on both sides, you still don't have it. So this is a nice to have. I don't really care about that kind of thing. The Twitch H.264 thing, I agree with you, Sergio, that it was a misconfiguration kind of thing. So it's not really a reason to have or not to have something. So in that case, it was a server not really parsing things correctly, and that broke, but that was a negotiation aspect. So it's not really the reason I cared about. The third part is something that I cared more about specifically for a couple of different reasons. So it's not just the multiple streams functionality, which, as I said on the mailing list, Slack, and a few other places, I see more like making web future-proof. So I know that web right now mandates support for just one audio and one video stream, so it's not really an issue now today. But the moment where we want to have multiple audio and video streams, that becomes a problem, because if as a client I send an offer with one audio and video stream, and as a server I'm only prepared to send you 3 video streams back, that becomes a problem. And it is a problem also today for me as well, because if I want to add web support to the video room plugin, which is my SFU, that's something I need to fight with, because my SFU does support multiple video streams. There may be publishers that support any kind of different things. I cannot really constrain things just for web specifically. So it's something that I would need to take care of specifically. So it is already an implementation constraint for me. I do already have web support in the streaming plugin, so this is definitely not Lorenzo is too lazy to implement web. I already have web. So this is, again, something that I'm thinking about for something for the future and so on. And more in general, considering that I did a lot of work to implement web in the streaming plugin, so it was not easy at all for me to add the client server, client-side support offer to the streaming plugin. For me, the reason where I'm sympathetic with other developers, and this is also to clarify the point that Tim made, this is not an issue with legacy SFUs and so on. I'm just thinking about all the SFUs out there that exist that may have some assumptions about how they like or they prefer to establish the subscriber part of the implementation. And if they have to completely completely revolutionize, or let's say refactor their implementation just to support web, it's my opinion that they will just not implement web. So my proposal to add server-sent offers in that case is mostly as a way to, let's say, foster adoption of web in the first place by making it easier for server-side developers to add web to their own implementations. Because, of course, I know that there will be implementations where it will be easier or harder to do. I know that for some of you, the architecture was already structured in a certain way, so it was much easier for you to do. It was much harder for me to do because I had made different assumptions in my own implementations, especially the streaming plugin and the video room plugin. And just because it was so hard for me to implement in the streaming plugin, I had not and will not implement this mode into the video room plugin as well, which is my regular SFU. So if I want to do WIP and web, I still can do it. I need to have one plugin send media to another plugin. It's a bit more articulated. It works, especially it's something that you would do anyway if you need large scale, but it means that if somebody, and for instance, this is the case of Dan, who at the time asked me if I want to do everything with the video room plugin, can I do WIP and web just with that plugin? The answer was, no, you cannot, because there are these constraints over here. And just my implementation experience made me think that there will be other developers we will make the same considerations. We will not be as invested as I was in WIP and web, and will not implement WIP and web as a consequence. Or maybe they will just implement WIP because it's easier that way. And so my argument for having server-sent offers as well is just, let's make it easier for people to implement it. Let's foster adoption, because of course we are publishing something in the world that we want as many people as possible to adopt. Otherwise, we end up with something that will not have the necessary adoption. There will be maybe many enough implementations, but not as many as there may be. And of course, I understand Julius's point about the IETF police. There will be cases where people will implement just one or not the other and so on, which is why the idea was, let's allow the server to choose which one they want, just because updating a server-side implementation is much harder than implementing a client-side implementation. The server can do whatever it wants. The client is usually very dumb. If you do it in JavaScript, doing a client offer or a server offer, or answering an offer is trivial. Even when you use a different stack, which may be Python or something based on Rust or something else, or even GStreamer, it's usually much easier to control how the client handles these sort of things. For instance, I had a GStreamer-based implementation, and it was relatively easy for me to switch from server-sent offers to client-sent offers. So updating the client side was trivial for me. Updating Janus to do that part took me a month. I don't know how much it took, but it was really definitely much harder. So again, I do have web already. So it's not really just for me. It's really just to foster adoption and make it easier for everybody to enter the game, basically. And then I'll shut up because I noticed that I probably took too much already.
I just want to echo exactly what Lorenzo said, but tack on, WebRTC didn't have a signaling mechanism. And so there is this flexibility, inherent flexibility within WebRTC. and it's not every single SFU manufacturer, whoever, isn't in this room right now. And so, as Lorenzo said, lots of them have made decisions. And so, I don't know, calling them legacy just because they decided to implement things in a particular way, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and expecting them to change all of that just for web isn't going to happen. We've got other specs kind of coming in. I won't mention them here, but everyone hopefully knows what I'm talking about, that are trying to compete with web. And so, yeah, if we end up kind of not making this flexible enough now, then the what am I trying to say? The landscape of potential protocols longer term, there will be more. There won't be de facto WIP, and there won't be de facto web. Other people will do other things. And then very quickly, just to go on to what Julius was saying, there is no IETF police. Completely agree. We all know that people pick and choose what they want out of specs. And so ultimately, I believe the spec should allow for as much flexibility as possible to make things work across the board. It's up to people whether or not they implement all of them or not. They're going to do that anyway. That's my point. Thank you.
So when you were making your list, Lorenzo, you're talking about federation not being like a minor thing. I think that would be it's underplaying it. Like if we're like, I want to do the most good, or the internet is for the end users, what a gift to be able to let people, easily switch between providers, if one starts doing wrong by them, or let them to link SFUs together to easily use what like is best for them. I get that's not the business case here. Like that's not the business case of web, but like what an opportunity to do like the most good and do like what's best for the end user. That seems really important to me.
Just a couple of things. First, I would like to remind that the scope of WIP and WIS is streaming. It's not SVU. So, I mean, it is great that web has been implemented by many conferencing applications, but the main use case for web is ingest and streaming and watching a stream on a device. So, when you say that it is easy to have a client change, I mean, the goal is not to have a browser that watches a stream, that it is trivial. I mean, even with a custom protocol, the goal is to have Samsung TVs to play web natively, to have FMPEG, to be able to play web natively, to be able to have Android desktop player to play web natively. So this is not easy, and this is not going to be something that you can easily change or easily implement or easily ask them to do two things. I mean, it will be a miracle if we are able to get web playing natively on a Roku device, on a Samsung device, and this is the goal of web. And this is so when you think that putting something in a JavaScript player is easy, JavaScript player was never the goal of implementing web. I mean, it is great if, as most WebRTC services and use cases are supported by web, but the main use case for web is streaming, and this is the scope of the working group, and this is the scope of the draft. So if we don't have a good protocol for doing conferencing, it is not a problem for web. It is a problem in WebRTC that we have decided to do it otherwise. But it is not web to provide the solution for having for being able to watch or to have a client to play any kind of multi-conference solution. So, and the second thing that I'm going to say is going to say that that let the market choose. I will completely oppose to that, because if Samsung TV choose to implement the part of the spec that my service is not implementing and cannot implement, then I will be really screwed. I mean, it is not something that I cannot. I mean, for me, the fragmentation of the client is something critical, and it is something that we should avoid at all costs, because again, the players that we are talking now not about are not easy JavaScript player that support everything that you want. Is but for that we don't need web. I mean, it's when we need web for when we don't support WebRTC right now, that it is, for example, FFmpeg, TPs, Locus, and all other devices that are hard to have a WebRTC in place.
So first of all, I very strongly agree with what Sergio said about clients being the part that we must prioritize. And I most respectfully disagree with Lorenzo, who says that servers are difficult. Lorenzo, I've seen your code. You're good at doing servers. Okay, you will change it. Whatever we do in this group, you will manage. On the other hand, clients are a real problem. I mean, the promise of web is that in 2 years, I go to my local electronics shop, I buy a €200 projector, plug it into my Ethernet, and stream to it using web. And this projector will never receive a firmware update. It will just work. That is what we're hoping for in web. But the main point is that I'm not convinced that having server-side offers is all you need in order to be able to stream a video conference through web. The problem with a video conference is that the number of streams is going to vary dynamically. So the fact that you can set the number of streams at the session establishment gives you very little. And I think that the better argument going in the same direction would be that doing server-side offers makes it possible, or at least easier, I'm not sure, to set the simulcast envelope. Okay, so what I don't understand with my one minor nit about client-side offers is what happens if the server knows the simulcast envelope, the client doesn't know it, and the server wishes to establish with the client a simulcast session. Okay, I don't know if that can be done with client-side offers. At any rate, I don't know how to do it. I don't know if it's a real problem, but that's the only argument I see in favor of server-side.
Right, gosh, there's a lot of stuff here. So on the last point, on Julius's last point, I wonder whether that's something that my URL hack could be extended to do, so that the part of that that URL also flags that the server is expecting to send simulcast. I haven't thought about that. It's totally off the top of my head. It may not work, but it's an idea at least. So I've got a question for Lorenzo, which is, if we required both server-side and client-side offers, would that be more or less work for an SFU developer? My instinct is that it's more than specifying one or the other. And then my third thing is a question to Sean, which is, it isn't clear to me why he thinks that the server-side offer option improves the ability to swap providers. Like, I don't understand the linkage there. I missed something, I think. So those are my questions.
Jumping into the queue quickly just to answer the question. So do you mean, I mean, if you, the idea is that if a server only has to implement one, then in that case, it makes it easier for the server, because you, as the implementer of the server, you just pick whatever is more in line with whatever assumptions you made when you wrote the code in the first place. And so it means that since you only implement one, you expect clients to communicate with you the way that you are tailored to work with. So that's why I see this as something that is easier for servers to deal with, for servers implementers to deal with. There may be, of course, depending on whatever discovery mechanism there might be to figure out which mode basically how a client can figure out which of the mode exists and so on and so forth. Once you get to the point of actually dealing with the negotiation, you only do negotiation one way as far as WEP is concerned, and so this is easier for you. I don't know if this answers your question.
So to summarize that, you don't believe that 4 is a realistic option?
Now let me, I unpinned the 4 slide. So client, so you mean making it mandatory for both client and servers to do both things, basically? Yeah, no, yeah. I see that basically that's the same as 1 for me, because that makes it even, I mean, that's much harder than 1 probably for right. Server implementers, or let's say just as hard, because if, for instance, in my case, my plugins were basically hard-coded to work with server-sent offers for anything that was subscriber-related, and this was just a design choice that I made at the time. And so that one would have been a no-brainer for me to implement. The client-side offers would have taken an effort to implement. And so basically that and 1 for somebody in my case would have been basically the same thing. For people that only implemented client-side offers for their subscription model, it would have been as hard for them to implement too, because basically they are forced to implement something that doesn't exist. So yeah, basically from Neil's list, 5 would have been the suggestion that I would have made.
Am I up? Okay. So yeah, I hear what all you guys are saying. And to start off, I'm really against all the mandatory stuff or must do. I do realize that's in a lot of RFCs, but in our particular implementation, we support both types of web. And I don't think you can tell it to like Samsung's televisions. You can't tell them it's mandatory for you to send a blank offer and also handle a generated offer on that television to view something. I just don't see that's going to work. I see Sergio's point of, you're not going to have LibWebRTC on a Samsung TV, maybe or maybe not. It probably is there, but the client in that case would be the television. So it would know what codecs it has. So it could, generate a text SDP. You don't have to have a bunch of libraries to generate text content that consists of the SDP. So I see both ways. I think both should be allowed, but neither should be mandatory in the case of web. So that's really all I wanted to say, but I'm mostly here to listen.
Yeah, I agree with Paul that making any one of these mandatory is probably problematic, but I also see the issue with Julius's point of like expanding the scope of this where it just gets crazy. So I get that part of it too. I think I think Tim's idea is actually a pretty good one, because what we're going to end up happening is if we go with client-side offer only, we end up having this actually out-of-band communication with the SFU or server infrastructure or whatever it is, right? That says, okay, what do you have available for me, right? And then it'll probably include stuff like what codecs are available, what profile do you want, all this other stuff, right? And it's because, like a product like Rev 5 Pro or like the Millicast product, right? They all have available streams. They know what codecs they are. They know what, those things exist there, right? And the client telling it what it can do seems a little backwards, right? Just in that particular use case. But so then you're going to be mandated in creating some kind of communication anyway that's out of band. So Tim's idea, I think not making it mandatory is actually a pretty decent one. Putting it in the URL so that it's already kind of spec'd out like what's available on the server with that request, it kind of makes sense. I know there's the other topic that I don't know if we're going to get to today, but Neil's put it in the mailing list, which is like what kind of URL or header kind of information. How does a client know that it's actually hitting a web address? I kind of see Tim's thing is sort of related to that too, and maybe we could address both together with that one. I don't know, but I would love to hear the feedback on that. And look, I think no matter what, whichever way you guys go with it, I think we'll we'll do the spec, right? We'll make it work. But I do think the goal here is to make it easy for everyone involved. And yeah, it'd be amazing if Roku supported WebRTC streaming, right? So like, let's get that to happen in whatever way we can, you know, and all the other devices out there.
Like, the one thing I was sad to see is that with Twitch, they did a bunch of proprietary signaling on the side to handle like the multiple videos. So you would like join a stream, you would go to watch a channel and there was multiple videos associated with it. And so it would do like a WebSocket to pull down all the different streams and stuff like that. Because I wanted to keep it web, but since it's only one audio, one video, you had that. So it would have been nice to be able to do the server offers, because then you could just do one, and then because it is a real thing to have like multiple viewpoints and multiple audio tracks for multilingual and stuff like that.
I just want to say I concur with that, Sean. Sorry for jumping the line, but that is a use case. The multi-view use case is very common where you got things that are associated. Yeah.
But sorry also for jumping there, but like, is it really feasible to build something only on STP? Like if I have like, I don't know, 3 different audio tracks in different languages or something like this, like can all of this be, or like, I don't know, maybe like a sport event with different camera angles or something like this is a better example. Like in my view, I always thought like this will require like some out of band telling the client what is available so it can choose. Like I don't see how this would ever fit into STP, but maybe I'm missing something there. So that's why I'm curious, Sean, if you have ideas on how this could work without extra signaling.
For me, I was just shoving stuff into track IDs and other, like I was overloading that as much as possible. And then what I had hoped was that eventually like we would open a data channel and we would inform the user, like we would allow renegotiations or something like that eventually. Like it would be nice just if that initial, you know, you hit the server, you get the initial offer and you get all these tracks. So you get like, because the time to video was super important, and having to negotiate 4 different peer connections made the time to video not great. And so people complained about that. And then to the Roku embedded point, if as a builder, if someone came and said, okay, Roku has shipped it, but they only support client offers or they only support server offers, I would go and implement it. Like if I was looking at us, I would expect client offers to be mandatory, but server offers to be optional. Because if someone really does need the server offers, they can go do it and the clients don't support it. But we still get that, you know, it's like that tier of you get the minimum, you get the MVP with the client offers and the server offers, add all these additional things that maybe Roku doesn't care about in that initial firmware release. But yeah, I guess that's my experience with OBS as well, is that I'm just like picking away at features. It's like, what's the simplest thing you can do that's in the spec? Because, you know, with OBS, we implemented just the tiniest little bit that they would let us merge, and then it's like slowly adding more. So that would be the same here. You know, server offers would be the optional, and you would eventually get it. But all the devices you go buy at the store would probably be client offers only.
I've written down a couple of things. So Chris, Tim, and Sean, about this URL thing. Sounds like a web manifest file that I've been talking about, where you would call a URL and it would tell you all about the session, and then you could go do with it as you wanted. Secondly, wouldn't it be cool if web was a data channel only, and then you would set up the rest of your session using your data channel? Sorry. It's super important to get this right in V1 for exactly those reasons, right? So that, you know, you can go buy a 5-year-old projector and it work. Doing anything as a V2 or an addition to the draft is not going to happen. Like, people aren't going to implement it, right? You've got Ivan. You've got multiple people, multiple companies that build things for customers. I'm not saying like Dolby don't build things for customers, but you've got multiple businesses that all build things for numerous customers, all saying that this needs to be flexible. And I really believe that we can't lose the flexibility of both server offers and client offers being a thing. Otherwise, you will just you're going to lose a ton of people. And yeah, what Sean just said. Well, yeah, Roku support client offers, and so because they haven't, like, let's think in a people not fulfilling, not implementing the spec fully. I mean, God forbid it happens, but it does actually happen, right? So let's say Roku go off and ignore the spec. The spec says a client has to do client offer and client answer. It says that, but they ignore it, and so they only implement client offer. Well, then, you know, anyone that wants to work with Roku as a provider, well, they're going to go and implement server-side answers if they don't already. Point is, people ignore specs all the time. The spec should be as flexible as possible.
Sergio, I think you're muted.
Yeah, speaking as a, so yeah, I was muted. Speaking as the editor, with the editor hat off, I mean, things cannot be flexible in a spec, in an IETF spec. I mean, maybe we are not want to publish this as a different document or spec, but in the IETF we have a way of writing a spec, we have a right of writing mass, we have a language that we have to fulfill, and it will be rejected by the reviewers if we have so many flexibility and we don't have mandatory things and we just basically implementing whatever you want. So I think that this, so we have to put either, it cannot be both optional, it has to be one mandatory and another not optional, or both mandatory, but it is not like we cannot put the mandatory languages in the spec because it is not how IETF work. So given said that, I mean, I agree in that having multiple audio and video tracks, multiple camera angles, multiple languages is a huge use case and something that I would like to work on. I mean, it's something that is implemented in Millicast for years right now. And as Niels has said, it is not something that the SDP is flexible enough to provide the semantical information about languages, what are the camera angles, things like that. So for that, what at least I have, also it is a bit naive to say that server-side offers will solve that solution, because camera angles, at least in my case, can go off and on dynamically. You can have languages and transcriptor services started at some moment in time, so the languages can change. You can have a lot of dynamic there that it is not. So for that, we will have to have event back channel, even if it is server-side, server and send events or data channels that provides these events back to the clients, and the clients should be able to send renegotiations and establish the different number of client of tracks or audio tracks or video track that he want to display, because it may have constraints in the physical display about the number of, or even the number of decoders that it can have available, because it can be just a simple hardware decoder that only support 2 H.264 or whatever. So it is not something that the server side can choose and individually. It has to be negotiated, and we'll have to have a whole new way of both signaling not only the SDP and the RTP information about the tracks, but also the semantical information about what this is the language, or this is a different in the same language. But for example, here in Spain, you can watch the TV, and you can in the soccer games you can listen to different radio stations while you are watching the game. So it is not only languages. There's a whole different casuistic there that that we can address, but it is not going to be as easy as just implementing server-side offers. We will have to implement quite a lot of other things that I would be really happy to explore this use case. But at least for my, I mean, I have already implemented it in Millicast with client-side offers, so just doing renegotiations once the basic streaming is set up. And the second one, for me, it is not, I can't implement server-side offers. It is not that it will take me a while, or it's just that I can. I mean, I have this very distributed architecture when the edge node does not know the codec that it is in the stream. Because I have so many streams, I have so many servers that I cannot be propagating all the information of all the codecs to all the servers. So once a viewer is established, I start pulling this information for the upstream servers, and this is when I can start sending the answer or sending the RTP based on whatever the client has told me that it supports. The second one is that, yes, but you can just send all the codecs available in the world and just make the client just return the answer, but it may happen that the clients, as the SDP is specified, when you are sending server-side offer, is the client may be able to choose between one of them, and this is not the one that it is available in the server. For example, I can send all the H.264, AB1, whatever, and the client says, hey, but I have a hardware accelerated decoder and I only want to receive H.264, but my streamer is sending an AB1, so I will not be able to do that. So for me, it is not that I will have to implement more or less. I mean, if Roku implements only server-side offers, I will not be able to implement it.
Can I very quickly sorry, I'm jumping the queue, but just, you are saying that you can't implement server-side offers, and if Roku decided to go down that direction, you couldn't support them.
No.
But that is entirely the same case for a ton of other developers. What if they can't implement client-side offers?
But
I'm sorry, I let you speak. Let me finish speaking, please. So you're saying that you can't do things a particular way. There are a ton of other people out there that can't, without completely re-architecting their solution, work that way. But you're saying that your way is more important, right? That is why we need the flexibility that we've been asking for.
Okay, first, I will oppose to have server-side offers.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to jump in because there are 5 minutes left. So I'm not jumping in, I'm in the queue actually. So let's assume, so first of all of you are being in bad faith. You can implement it. I've seen Lorenzo's code, I've seen Sergio's code. I'm sure you will manage. I just don't believe that you guys cannot do it. But that's not my point. The point I want to make is, let's suppose we agree that one is compulsory, either S or C is compulsory, and the other one is optional. What does in-band negotiation look like? Now, if client offers are compulsory and the client wishes the server to send an offer, that one's easy. The client sends an invite, tells the server, please send me an offer. The server says, sorry, I cannot do server-side offers. The client says, well, okay, and sends a client-side offer. Okay? If, on the other hand, it's server-side offers that are compulsory, then the client who wishes to do client-side offers has to send an offer, to which the server answers, sorry, I'm going to do the offer. But by the time the client has sent the offer, it has already expended resources. It has already launched its ICE gatherer, made allocations on the turn servers and whatever. Okay, so I have no strong opinions between client side and server side. I have a very strong opinion that we must pick one that's compulsory and define a mechanism for in-band negotiation. Okay, I'm just mentioning that from a purely technical point of view, negotiation is much easier if client side is compulsory. Okay, I don't feel strongly about that. What I feel strongly about is let's make one compulsory. Whichever it is, I trust that both Lorenzo and Sergio are going to manage to implement it, even though in the case of Sergio, I understand your arguments. It will take some tricky asynchronous code, but I'm sure you'll manage.
I think I agree. I think any of us can implement whatever we need to get it done, right? And I understand Sergio's comment that if you've got an architecture, it's going to be a pain to do it. But at the same time, if Roku did that and you had enough customers needing it, you would figure out how to get it done, right? So if they forced you to do server offers. But I think the big thing here is that the use case that I hear that we really want to accomplish is make it so that there's less back and forth. I think that was your point right there, right, Julius, is like make it as efficient as possible. And then also accommodate some level of information from the server back down to the client so that it can give that client the right information to negotiate, right? Whether it's multiple tracks or other things in there. I agree that's probably a kind of a secondary use case, but certainly the knowing what codec's available for what stream and not having to do that out of band, because it goes back to Julius's point of like, hey, if I got to go and negotiate again, that's going to slow down that client, right? And it's also going to be an interoperability problem because like the Roku device isn't going to know how to do that out of band thing, right? It's just if it's not in the spec. So to me, it seemed more logical to be like a server-side offer. But at the same time, I think Tim's idea, and then we're going down this path of having some kind of like maybe a URL or a header, like which is part of the other discussion that Niels thought we might be able to get to, but it sounds like not because we only have 3 minutes left in this meeting. Maybe it could be addressed there, and we do stick to client-side offers, you know what I mean, for the SDP portion of it, right? And maybe there's a way to negotiate other data. It should just be arbitrary data, I think, in this case, because it could be all kinds of stuff that you want to implement. That maybe that's the way to do it, right? I think we all want to get this thing done and have it be a spec that everybody's implementing out there. And Sean's use case that he mentioned with Twitch, that's a real thing. We see a lot of these too. And yes, it can be done where you have like multiple trips or you create another channel where you have to communicate all this information, whether it's a separate data channel over WebRTC or it's WebSockets or something else. I just think it would be really nice to have the ability to tell the client what's available on the server and do that in an efficient way. And maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the SDP offer, right? Maybe it's this other topic that we need to have.
All right, so we are at the top of the hour here, so I guess Niels and I need to figure out how we're going to pull this together. So Niels, thoughts?
Yeah, my current thinking is like I don't hear that we have a consensus in the room. But maybe I was thinking, can we eliminate at least some of these things from the slides to like trim it a little bit down and like focus the discussion more on remaining options or something like this? Does that seem like a viable path forward?
Just jumping here really quick, Niels. I think my point about the other discussion around the URL format or like the header and all of that, I do think it's related because I think some of that, like especially because Tim brought up this other idea, it might be able to be addressed there, and this maybe is a moot point at that point, So I think it's worth having that discussion. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I started that only because it came up in Dublin, and we did like it felt like the group didn't have like a good solution to that topic, so I was trying to just make progress on that. Like going over this list I put up here, like I don't think I heard anyone argue for option number 2. Did I hear that right?
I think from a server offers perspective, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I think we were all pointing towards one of, obviously, server offer or server answer being mandatory. No, sorry, they're both optional. Client offers and client answers are necessary, and it's up to the server what they implement. I know that completely goes against what Sergio was saying about embedded devices and how things are difficult. But at least in my experience, clients have more flexibility to be able to go and implement things. And so, yeah, that's why wouldn't it implement both? Like, that's what the spec says, right? So yeah, so I think that's it's either client side offer.
So you're voting for 4 or 5?
5. Client and server offers mandatory. No, I don't think anyone's asking for 4, because the whole point is that lots of SFU can't implement without re-architecting everything. They can't implement server offers, or they can't.
So I agree that, like, I heard like only arguments against number 4. Basically, if we do make both sides mandatory, just makes the overall solution way more complex. So we can take that off the list. Do people want more time to think about Tim's proposal? The server side with like some additional.
Again, I think that's related to a URL kind of format, which is the other topic. And what I think is cool about that is it's possible we could address it there. You know, this concern.
That, and it tied in with the WIP manifest that Dan's proposing.
Maybe it's in the manifest. Maybe it's something else with it. You know, I do think it's very similar to like a HLS. Playlist. You know, like that kind of concept, right? So.
But why does the client needs to know the codecs? I mean, it is not going to start downloading H.266 if it does not implement it natively.
Yeah, but clients can do multiple codecs. So if the server only has one, if it has an AV1 only and it doesn't have H.264, how's the client going to know that that's what's available?
It sends the client an offer with all the supported codecs, and the servers choose which one it sends.
Yeah, like I said, we did both, and what you're saying, Sergio, that has merit. And on the server, we do decide if a client has sent us an SDP with 16 codecs, we choose the one that we prefer or the one that we have available at that time. So that does work. It's just that if something has to be mandatory, in my opinion, that should be mandatory. But you shouldn't cut off the other option where a client should just decide to say it's a browser, it can do this easily in JavaScript. What the server has offered to them, they decide which one they want. They're low bandwidth, so they grab AV1 if it's on there. They're high bandwidth, they grab H.265. You know.
Yeah, but you can already provide preferences in the SDP by the codec order. So you can, for example, this is something that I am going to implement with multi-codec supporting H.264 and AV1 for the same streams. And based on the codec order on the client, I will send the best codec, because I mean the clients know which if it has H.264 hardware available it support AV1, but in software, so maybe it's a mobile device and they want you to receive H.264, they just put the codec in the proper order, and the server will send the codecs in the order that the client has already provided. So
I'm saying that works. It can work, I should say. I'm just saying we don't cut off the other option. That's all.
yeah, but the other option, again, it brings the door to fragmentation and to have to implement both. When even so, if you are saying that it is going to be flexible, it means that we are going to have to implement both, because if FMPEG support client servers offered and then and Roku supports server-side offers, we'll have to implement both. That it is exactly the opposite of what we didn't want at the first time with 4. So
that's actually the case now. GStreamer does one, FFmpeg does the other. It's so you've basically just cut off one if you cut off the other. So
basically,
it's what we're in now.
We are making 4 mandatory. So we are making both mandatory instead of making it flexible. By putting it both in the spec, we are making both mandatory. So
I don't know, Sean. I don't think that we can take any vote here.
Nope. I think we it's too hard to do a show of hands tool at this point. I think what we want to do is try to come up with a good question to make sure that we get a response that can get us moving one way or another.
I mean, for me, sorry, the question is, like, Sergio, what would make you happy, right? We're just trying to do what's right by the spec and to make it usable for everyone longer term. This isn't, we want this because, you don't want to do any work. Like Lorenzo's proven that he's done a load of work, for example. Like, what would make you shift your stance a little bit? Like, we got asked to make a pull request to put forward the way that we were doing it. That got made. We've had a big discussion about it, and like, we're not set in stone. Like, things like something I said in GitHub was, like, we have to come to a consensus, and you said, well, IETF isn't about consensus. It's about like coming to a decision and making that happen. No, there has to be a consensus, and no. Sorry, not consensus. There has to be compromise. There has to be compromise in order to make a consensus, right? And you said, well, IETF isn't about compromise. It's about the right thing. Something along those lines.
No, I mean, for me, I prefer not having a spec than having a spec that I don't implement. So I don't need to compromise. So nothing in the IETF, it allows, it requires to have consensus, but it does not mandate consensus. So even if you are doing work or what you are trying to prove your points, I don't need to agree to that. If I have strong opinions about that, I can still be disagreeing to that, and maybe I'm not able to change my mind, and I will disagree to that. So this is so this is just to make sure. So the only thing, probably the only way that I see that I could accept server-side offers is the worst case is that what it has proposed that the client has to send first the client-side offers, and the server can reject it and send and tell the client to use the server-sent offer instead. But this is obviously it will cause problems with the customer, with the clients having to create resources twice and whatever. But I think that this is the only thing that really would mandate clients to implement the client-side offers. That it is the only acceptable solution for me.
And it's good to hear that you're willing to potentially do something, because that's the reason why, me, Lorenzo, and from Ivan, we all stopped talking, because like at one point we said, well, we're never going to change your mind. So what's the point in having the conversation, right? So why are we all here? If the author's not going to, listen and potentially change their mind, then why are we all here? Why are we all wasting time on this? So like, there has to be a reason to continue this conversation. If that's not going to change, then let's just end the conversation, right? Now I'm done. Sorry.
Well, I do think
All right.
that Sergio just outlined an actual thing that would be acceptable to him, so we should definitely document that, which is client-side offers first, right? And then the server can reject it, and then the client should send a server. It should accept the server offer instead. I would say the reject probably is the server sending back a server-side offer at that point instead of you don't need another round trip. It's just a reject. The reject is it's sending you a server offer, right? That's the reject. Does that make sense, Sergio?
Yep, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I think at this point we're going to finish here. I wrote this last option in the meeting notes. I think like Sean and me are going to think about questions. Not sure if we're going to do it on the list or schedule yet another interim. We'll see.
I think that this format seemed to work pretty well. So I would definitely advocate for a virtual meeting where we can get people on the call to do it real time.
And maybe Chris' point is valid that like maybe we try to take into consideration the outcome of the URL part as well for the next interim, basically.
I do think that topic is really important because especially for these client-side implementations and making it easy, it makes a lot of sense.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much for all your time today.
Yep.
Read the list for more announcements on how we proceed.
Yep.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.